I felt like Hollywood is just spineless, en masse. And it really felt like, oh, this is a really clear indication that we're not the cool club anymore.
This war on jokes must end. Will Smith didn't get kicked out of the Oscars for going Ike Turner on Chris, but Kevin Hart got kicked out of hosting it for a joke. Who are these people who say cancel culture isn't a real thing? Just among comedians who've gotten fired and lost gigs for exercising their freedom of expression, the toll is high.
Let's slow down and look at that infamous awards show moment again. The slap wasn't just another viral celebrity clip the internet turned into endless memes. It felt more like a giant flashing billboard announcing that something inside Hollywood's culture has gone completely sideways. And the weird part wasn't only that someone walked on stage and struck a comedian over a joke. The truly bizarre part was what happened afterward. Instead of the room freezing in disbelief, people started clapping. The ceremony kept moving forward like nothing unusual had happened. It created this strange atmosphere where millions watching at home wondered whether everyone in the building had silently agreed to pretend the moment was normal. If you're here for the deeper breakdown, hit like and subscribe. Seriously, it helps the channel grow. And stick around, because the real story behind that moment is bigger than one angry reaction. What made the situation worse is how it overshadowed everyone else. Think about the artists who spent years grinding toward that stage. Actors dealing with endless auditions, filmmakers scraping together budgets, people hearing, maybe next time, more times than they can count. For many of them, that night was supposed to be the pinnacle of their careers. Then suddenly the entire broadcast gets hijacked by a single outburst. Instead of celebrating creativity, the world was suddenly watching a grown adult lose control on live television while the room awkwardly tried to move past it.
Cast a pall over everybody's shining moment last night. You know, a lot of people worked really hard to get to that place and to have their moment in the sun and to get their award for the really hard work they did. And it is no mean feat to go through all the stuff you have to go through when you're nominated for an Oscar. It's a gauntlet of devotion that you have to do. And you know, it was just a selfish moment that cast a pall over the whole thing.
And before anyone jumps in with the emotions were running high defense, let's pause for a second. Yes, emotions exist. People feel hurt, embarrassed, or offended all the time. But feelings are not a free pass to abandon basic rules of behavior. In any normal environment, walking onto a stage and putting your hands on someone because you disliked a joke would be unacceptable. That's not controversial. It's basic social training most people learn as children. That's why some reactions afterward resonated so strongly. Instead of politely brushing it off, a few voices pointed out what many viewers were thinking. The applause and celebration afterward made the entire industry look weak. Imagine if a random audience member had done the same thing. Security would have tackled that person before their second step.
I was sickened. I was sickened by the standing ovation. I felt like Hollywood is just spineless, en masse. And it really felt like, oh, this is a really clear indication that we're not the cool club anymore.
There was some question today about if anyone else had walked from the audience and done that, they would have been escorted out by security or maybe even arrested. The police asked Chris if he wanted to file charges. They asked Chris, do you want to file charges? And Chris apparently said no, he did not.
He doesn't want the hassle. I'd announced this morning that I was suing Will for $200 million because that video is going to be there forever. It's going to be ubiquitous.
Once you step back and look at it, the contradiction becomes obvious. Hollywood often reacts strongly to controversial words or jokes from years ago. Careers can be derailed over something said long in the past. Yet in this case, an act of physical aggression happened live on stage, and the ceremony basically continued as if someone had merely spilled a drink. That contradiction feeds into a broader debate happening across entertainment. Some comedians argue that society has entered an era where jokes are treated like weapons.
Final rule tonight. It's time for another edition of one of our favorite departments here on Real Time, explaining jokes to idiots. Where as a public service, I break down jokes for the humor impaired. Not that I have anyone particular in mind. Now, I know we're all sick of talking about the slap, but I'm sorry, one more thing needs to be said. Comedians have been under attack for quite some time, and I need to stick up for my tribe. This war on jokes must end.
A good example people bring up is the situation involving comedians losing major opportunities over old jokes resurfacing online. Hosting gigs disappear. Tours get cancelled. Sponsors walk away. Not because of violence. Not because of crime. Because of words said years earlier in a comedic context. Meanwhile, the award ceremony that night witnessed an actual confrontation on stage.
Will Smith didn't get kicked out of the Oscars for going Ike Turner on Chris, but Kevin Hart got kicked out of hosting it for a joke. Who are these people who say cancel culture isn't a real thing? Just among comedians who've gotten fired and lost gigs for exercising their freedom.
Whenever this topic comes up, someone always says the same thing: cancel culture doesn't exist. But then you look around and see entertainers losing projects, losing contracts, losing entire careers because a large online crowd decides something they said fails the latest moral test. You can call it whatever you want. Social punishment, internet exile, digital outrage cycles. The label doesn't matter as much as the pattern. And that award show moment became a perfect snapshot of that dynamic. One small detail reveals a lot. Right before the confrontation happened, the joke actually got a laugh. For a brief second, it looked like everyone in the room was enjoying the light roast that award shows traditionally include. Then a glance across the room changed everything.
And importantly, Chris's joke was received as funny. As evidenced by the audience and Will Smith laughing. And this is the moment where we got to see a live-action, real-time encapsulation of how cancel culture works. Look at what happens next. Jada shoots her husband a look. Let's slow the tape down to capture this moment. There. Back and to the left. Back and to the left. Back and to the left.
Body language shifted. The mood flipped instantly. And suddenly, the reaction transformed from amusement to outrage. It's a fascinating social phenomenon. Anyone who has spent time in a comedy club has seen a version of it before. People laugh freely at first. But later, someone steps forward and declares the joke unacceptable. Not while the room is laughing. That moment usually arrives after the laughter fades. Because at that point, it's no longer about humor. It's about control over the narrative. Someone positioning themselves as the referee of acceptable reactio.
Before this moment, Will is laughing because he hasn't yet found out that his original genuine reaction is wrong and that he should conform to a different view. And he's the one who's being manly? I've seen the same syndrome happen in comedy clubs. Woke hecklers who literally have to wait for the laughter to die down before they yell, "That's not funny!"
And that's where the bigger cultural risk appears. If comedians start believing that any joke could lead to punishment rather than criticism, the safest move becomes avoiding risk entirely. But comedy without risk stops being comedy. It turns into polite corporate conversation. Safe, bland, and forgettable. A joke that references pop culture or makes a quick comparison used to be considered normal stand-up material. Suddenly, the same structure can be interpreted as malicious intent. The problem is that once people begin assigning hidden motives to every punchline, humor becomes impossible to navigate.
And then Chris made what in the business is known as a "some is like some other" joke. He said to Jada Smith, "Jada can't wait for G.I. Jane 2, recalling the late 90s movie starring Demi Moore. That's it. That's the joke. You remind me of some other beautiful, buzz-cutted movie star. It wasn't an alopecia joke any more than the one about the chicken crossing the road is about bird flu."
If every joke is judged by the most negative interpretation someone can imagine, then eventually no joke survives. Because it's always possible to reinterpret a line in the harshest way. Someone can always say, what you really meant was. But mind reading isn't justice. It's speculation. And historically, award shows have always included playful teasing. Celebrities poke fun at each other. Hosts make jokes. The audience laughs, rolls their eyes, and moves on. That's been part of the entertainment tradition for decades.
Not an insult, although insult humor is also a staple of comedy. And in fact, an example of insulting someone's looks was on display that night when Regina Hall said, "We've been dealing with COVID for 2 years. It's been really hard on people." And Amy Schumer said, "Yeah, just look at Timothée Chalamet," and they cut to J.K. Simmons. Who made a face a lot like the one Jada would make later on. But that's where it ended. It's called being a good sport.
The adult way to deal with a joke you don't like is actually pretty straightforward. You don't laugh. Maybe you give a small eye roll. Maybe you sit there quietly thinking, yeah, that one didn't land for me. And if it really bothers you, you talk about it later. You respond with your own words, your own opinion, your own perspective. That's how conversations normally work in a functioning society. But physically confronting someone over a punchline, and then watching the crowd break into applause afterward, that's the moment that made a lot of viewers feel uneasy. Because the reaction in the room mattered almost as much as the incident itself. Applause isn't just background noise. Applause is a signal. It tells everyone watching what behavior is being rewarded. When people clap, they're saying, whether intentionally or not, this response is acceptable. And when approval shows up without any real consequences, it slowly starts turning an exception into a precedent. That's where the bigger concern comes in. Because if there's no clear boundary there, what happens the next time a comedian tells a joke that hits a little too close to home for someone in the audience? What stops the next angry person from thinking, well, if it happened there...
But that was not a good moment. It cast a pall over everybody's shining moment last night. You know, a lot of people worked really hard to get to that place and to have their moment in the sun and to get their award for the really hard work they did. And it is no mean feat to go through all the stuff you have to go through when you're nominated for an Oscar. It's a gauntlet of devotion that you have to do. And you know, it was just a selfish moment that cast a pall over the whole thing.
This conversation also connects to a bigger shift happening in how people view Hollywood itself. For decades, the industry built its reputation on satire and bold storytelling. It often challenged powerful institutions and poked fun at authority. Now some critics argue that it feels more protective of certain figures than critical of them. You can't demand endless sensitivity in speech while simultaneously shrugging off aggressive behavior. Those two standards collide. Being offended is part of life. The world isn't padded with bubble wrap. But offense alone can't become the justification for rewriting the rules of civilized behavior. When societies lose the ability to tolerate uncomfortable jokes or discussions, they don't become kinder. They become fragile.
You know, that insult is going to last a very long time. If you want to yell from the audience and disapprove or show a disapproval or say something on Twitter or whatever, you do not have the right to walk up on stage and smack somebody in the face because they said words.
No, I agree. I think we all agree on that. I just thought, Jim, that it escalated to that. You know what I mean? That it escalated to that level.
It didn't escalate. It came out of nowhere because Will has something going on inside him that's frustrated, and I wish him the best. I really do. I don't.
So the real reason that Slap became such a defining moment isn't just the shock factor. Celebrity drama happens all the time. What made this different is the message it seemed to send. It suggested a strange hierarchy where controversial words trigger massive consequences, while visible aggression can sometimes be softened depending on who is involved. That inconsistency raises bigger questions about creativity, accountability, and cultural standards. What happens to art when everyone is afraid of saying the wrong thing? What happens to public conversation when humor becomes a potential career-ending gamble? Comedians are not perfect. Some jokes fail. Some cross lines. Some deserve criticism. But historically, the solution to a bad joke has always been simple. Don't laugh. Critique it. Debate it. Move on. Destroying someone's livelihood or responding with violence has never been the answer. If the entertainment industry wants to regain credibility, it may need to rediscover a few basic principles. Proportion matters. Intent matters. And open expression matters too. Because a culture that loses the ability to laugh eventually loses the ability to talk honestly at all. And if the most influential entertainment industry in the world can't handle a simple punchline without turning it into a cultural crisis, maybe that legendary cool club reputation isn't as strong as it once was. If you enjoyed this breakdown, hit like, subscribe, and share it with someone who still believes outrage culture doesn't exist. And drop your thoughts in the comments. Where do you think the real line should be between accountability and censorship?